Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Territory Talk on the Four Corners Network, where we review and discuss Vice TV's Tales from the Territories. I am one of your hosts, Kris Rex, alongside my best friend and partner in everything, John Punn. John, how are we doing today?
Today I am excellent and improving better than I was, yesterday. But I'm ready to talk about this. We had a good episode. I can't wait to, dive in.
Yes, we had on this episode Jim Crockett Promotions, aka NWA Mid Atlantic, one of probably the most famous NWA territories. Uh, Next week we have the Mid South, which
Which
is
is probably the two most famous, and I think that's why these are the last
yes,
two episodes, of this before we go into the next one, which I
yes.
can't wait.
The next series we're gonna do from on with Vice TV is gonna be awesome. But let's get through with Jim Crockett Promotions. On this roundtable, we had Arn Anderson, Ricky Morton, Baby Doll, Nikita Koloff, David Crockett, and Jim Cornette. Now the funny thing,
What was funny was Nikita Koloff and Jim Cornette were in two
weren't
separate
yeah, they
areas.
weren't actually at the
They
table with
weren't at the
everybody.
table with the other four. So that was interesting to see. We know why Jim Cornette wasn't at the table. I wonder why Peter Volkov wasn't at the table. But
Nikki,
I like how they started off talking about this this territory was the heel territory. This is where the heels shone. Most of the time, heels were the champions. They ran the territory, and I feel that's where me and you would have fucking shined.
I believe it that me and you would have shined there, especially as a heel tag team. And
Yep.
the thing about wrestling is you have to have good heels. You're not gonna make money without good heels because you need somebody for the good guy to fight. You need somebody for the fans to hate. And if you're a good enough heel, you're gonna draw that company money just because the fans don't like you. Like as weird as it sounds, you're gonna draw the company money because they don't like you because they want to see you get your ass kicked, and that's something we were good at being is those heels that you wanted to see us get our ass kicked.
And think about it, they were saying that at that time that was the most money they earned. They were buying watches, they were buying cars, they were
Everybody
buying
was getting paid.
everybody was getting paid. Whether you was heel or face, top of the card, middle of the card, you was getting paid. And
Yeah, between 86 heading into 87. I mean, at that time you had Art Anderson, you have Flair, you had Dusty, you had Luger, Tully Blanchard, I mean, Ricky Moore, everybody was a name, pretty much.
yep, yep. It was good to see.
Now, something that I know for about NWA Mid Atlantic, NWA, the Jim Crockett Promotions, the way they did their TV, and even when I used to watch on back when it was WWE 24/7 on demand, I used to watch the NWA shows, and it was you didn't see the heel the you didn't see like the Ric Flair take on the Dusty Rhodes on TV. You didn't see that on TV.
Oh,
But on TV, what they did was they had them squash matches, what we call today squash matches, and it was mostly promo, and I noticed the heel mostly did the matches, and the face would do the promo most of the time, and I kind of like that concept of how that was booked that way. That
yep.
way, you had to pay to see the match. You had to pay to see Dusty versus Flair. You weren't gonna see it for free on fucking on TV.
The Crockett's were smart. They knew how to earn that money, man. They knew how to do it, how to book it, how to sell it, and they did a real good job at doing that.
And
That way, when they sold it to Ted Turner and it turned into WCW, it was able to keep on going.
yeah,
You know, it had all that steam behind it, behind the Crockett's.
Arn Anderson says that from 85 to 88, it was a golden era of wrestling, period, and it'll always be the greatest wrestling era. He talked about how Vince McMahon was going on an all-star hunt and taking top guys. And Arn was working in Pensacola, Florida, when he was recruited by Dusty Rhodes, and Dusty kind of did the same thing that Vince was doing. You know, it's kind of like they started gathering talent, and really wrestling was about to fucking boom. Like pretty
Yeah.
much wrestling was the thing to watch on TV.
The Crockett Promotion and territory was the only territory that Vince couldn't really get nobody from.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's really where the competition, when you think about it, really started. You know, and like you said, the reason they made money was because they had big heroes with great villains. You know,
Yeah. Like one of the best villains was manager Jim Cornette. You know, he came up as a photographer first on the sidelines, and then he got offered the manager job, found himself a tennis racket, so he had his little gimmick, and that was it. He took off from there.
Well, why don't you talk a little bit about Jim Cornette, because okay, guys, love him or hate him as a person, you cannot deny his work as a character and his mind for the business is something we have to separate when we're talking about wrestling. Like, we kind of have to separate his personal views, because he was a integral part of NWA, and you always being the heel, you kind of represent that Jim Cornette. So I would like you to kind of give your thoughts.
If I ever got back into the business, it is exactly in that role that I would want to do. The heel manager, the mouthpiece, whether the person needed a mouthpiece or not. That's just the role I would like to be in. And that's it. He's been in the business since the mid 70s. Like I said, he started as a cameraman, became a manager in the AWA for some of the best heels that you can imagine, and it instantly brought Jim Cornette, into the spotlight. He had the gift of gab that you need. If you don't have the gift of gab, you're not going to make it, especially when you're the manager. You are the voice of the person that is wrestling, that you are following around, And he did it, man. He paved the way for others just like him, At the time that he started managing, he had people like Freddie Blassie managing. He had people like Bobby Heenan managing, Mr. Fuji, So he had all these big top heel managers that, is either sink or swim in his case. And, there's I don't think far anyone better than Jim Cornette when it came to cutting a promo and putting over the match he was putting over, and the person he was managing, and the person that they were fighting. There was no one better than Jim Cornette.
Well, I'd have to agree with you there that when you think of heel manager, that I would say first comes Jim Cornette, then comes Bobby Heenan. But
I agree.
There's a angle that happens, and I want you to speak on it. The Cornette and Baby Doll situation.
That was actually a good rivalry. It was his first. Well, she was the first female and the only female in the company at that time. So she was working with all the boys to begin with. So, the storyline came about where he was going to be hitting her in a match, that the fans, he was the big heel, she was the big baby face, and she was young, she was beautiful, she was the eye candy of the screen. And it came the time for him to, be the woman beater that I was known to be whenever I brought my wife to the shows, And he took his tennis racket with the handle right into her gut. She falls over, sells it, and the crowd goes wild. Everybody wanted to get him.
And see, what's funny about this angle is the announcers told people that because of the shot to the stomach, there was a chance that Baby Doll might not have children. And what does Cornette respond by saying? He tells the crowd that it was great because nobody wanted a thing like that to reproduce.
And that's how you get heat, though. And that's how you get heat. Who wants anything fat and ugly like that to reproduce? And what was funny is, she wasn't even fat. The videos and everything that they showed,
But that's the thing. and I think that's what added more heat onto, you know what I mean? And he's calling this beautiful woman fat,
and
ugly, and she shouldn't be able to reproduce. Like, I mean, he knew how to catch heat on another level, and it wasn't cheap heat. You know what I mean? It was going the extra mile of instead of sitting there telling you I'm the bad guy, I'm going to show you how much of a bad guy I am. I'm going to hit a woman, and I'm gonna say, you know, it's good that she can't get pregnant because she ain't going to be able to reproduce. We don't need that in the world.
He's been hit with everything from the crowd, from bottles to pee poo to feces to
Vomit. He was the only civilian at one point to have to wear a bulletproof vest to work. That's the heat I only wish I could get, bro.
Love him or hate him, he has done so much for this business.
Yes, and you get like I may not agree with a lot of the things he says.
Thoughts and his views, but he's done a lot for this business.
Yes, and let me tell you, he's smart. Like, and when I mean smart, is like he's nerdy smart, and in the fact that he has all this history written down in books, written down how much they made, how much, you know, where they were, who was on the card when. I would have never thought of doing like really keeping that track, and now he has this personal record that he can state to fact or fiction. You know what I mean? And you can't deny that. And the man has a mind for this business. Again, love him or hate him, he did a lot, especially for Jim Crockett Promotions. And even when he came in to the WWE, he boosted a lot of careers.
He did. He definitely did. You know, that's like I said, that's one manager I'd follow in his footsteps.
Now we get a story from Baby Doll. And what people don't know is that Baby Doll is actually a daughter of a wrestler. She was a second generation wrestler, and she wasn't made smart to the business yet, but wanted to get involved. So she stole her dad's black book and called WCCW to see about getting the job to be Gino's valet because she had a crush on him. She worked there for a few months, and Hayes told her to go talk to Dusty Rhodes. He was about to start in the Carolinas, and he told Baby Doll to come up the following week. And Arn tells Baby Doll that ever since then the camera loved her, and that she was definitely something different to add to the shows, to add to the product.
Yep.
Then we see a video of Dusty slapping Baby Doll, and she was shocked that the woman hated her more than the men, you know, because she started off as a heel. So they ran an angle where Dusty got Baby Doll for 30 days. I think WWE did something like that with Brian Pillman and Marlena. History repeats itself, baby.
Gotta recycle those storylines, man.
She had to stay in character, though. You know, it is a time of kayfabe. She stayed in character as a heel and had to make it seem like she didn't want to be with Dusty. To keep her in line, Dusty would put a noose around her and walk her around like cattle or a dog. And that today they wouldn't get away with that ever again.
I wouldn't.
You know.
Remember her saying that a fan
grabbed her hair, pulled her hair one time, and she turns to Decker and sees it's a pregnant lady, and it was like what she said. It was like a cartoon where she just had to like stop herself, you know, from hitting a pregnant lady, you know. But you know, at that time, that's what she did, you know, like.
Why are you standing on a chair pulling the fucking wrestler's hair anyway if you fucking pregnant?
That would have been my mom, bro. My mom was like that.
That would have been my mom. No!
Listen. I heard my mom used to go to shows while she was pregnant with me. So who knows what she was up to.
Our moms hanging out together, bro.
Jesus. That would
at wrestling shows.
That would have been a bad time, bro. So we're gonna talk about one of the most famous tag teams to ever come across Jim Crockett Promotions. I mean, you want to talk about face? Oh man, you want to talk about the panty droppers? You want to talk about the boy toys before Shawn Michaels was a boy toy? You got to talk about the Rock and Roll Express, Ricky Morton and Robert Gibson. They were the ultimate babyface tag team, period, at the time.
You know, I always thought they were some ugly motherfuckers, and they were the pretty boys.
I don't
You
know.
know,
I don't know. It was a different time.
because it was a different time, a different
Yeah,
era.
yeah.
Like you would look at Shawn Michaels and Marty Jannetty and see those as the pretty boys. You know, they're the pretty boys. But then
You know what it is back then. I don't know. Even young, they looked old. Even when they were young, they looked old back then.
Exactly.
Like you look at a picture of somebody like a wrestler like that, and they were in their 20s, but they fucking look like they got the fucking porn stash, and they're fucking like they look like they're 40. You know.
I don't understand how the women reacted like that to them. But hey, they were over.
And again, they were the ultimate fucking babyface tag team. We're gonna talk about the Night of the Skywalkers.
Scaffolding match.
Because this involves another tag team that was you want to talk about over Road Warriors. There's nothing like there's a reason why we call something the Road Warriors pop. All right, it's the second they Road Warriors music hit, the crowd just erupted. And you have to bring up Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express. All right, the Road Warriors. You had the Nikita Koloff and what?
The Andersons,
The Ole and Arn Anderson. I mean, it was also was not Ole.
I just said Ole and Arn.
Ole.
But the tag team division was popping off.
Yeah, and that's what I was getting to. It was not only for a place for heels, but I noticed it was a lot of place. It was a place. It wasn't just a place for the heels to get over. It was a place for tag team wrestling to get over.
Yeah, it sure was.
Now, let's get into Night of the Skywalkers. The Night of the Skywalkers was a battle between the Bookers and the boys over who was going to end up on the scaffold. Arn said, no way. And they all agreed the match was not safe at all. All right, let's explain what this. It's legit a big scaffold way above the ring. Way above the ring. I mean, anything can happen. They did it in ECW, okay.
Years later.
Yes, years later, but they did it. This is just explain how dangerous it was, and New Jack almost died. Okay. XPW did it, and New Jack almost New Jack tried to purposely kill Vic Grimes. I mean, this is a dangerous fucking match, and I mean, I don't think you could even prepare for this match, like.
How do you prepare for that?
How do you know you're gonna take that bump right? You're gonna, if God forbid, man, the
whole thing just falls as soon as you take a bump.
So they all agreed the match wasn't safe.
They weren't small men either.
No,
man. They were all big, bulky guys.
And they all agreed the match wasn't safe. Dusty decided to book the Road Warriors against the Midnight Express in the match. Now, people paid to see Cornette get thrown off that fucking scaffold. That was. I mean, that's you knew that was going to happen. The idea was for the Express to lose, but to give the fans what they wanted, and Cornette had to take the fall as well. Cornette said he was not an acrobat, but told Animal to hold his leg until he can get a grip under the scaffold. The idea was then for Jim to hang for a second and then fall with Bubba catching him. Okay?
Bubba missed.
Now, he's dangling from the scaffold, and the original idea Dusty pitched was for Cornette to throw his legs up and fall backwards like a cheerleader and have the Express and Bubba catch him. Jim saw how high he would be and wanted nothing to do with that. So Jim came up with just dropping and Bubba catching him on the way down, and they would roll to the left. Well, Bubba totally fucking, I don't know what the fuck he did, but he did not catch him. And Cornette just splats and blows out both of his knees. And he notes that he's lived a fine life without an ACL. So he has no ACL since that fucking show, since that match.
Never took care of it. Just went on doing his job.
Bro, listen, I tore my ACL, MCL, and PCL, and the doctor said my door was like my knee was like a door on one hinge. I had to get that shit fixed. I can't imagine walking around. How many fucking years later? 40 fucking years later, still walking around with no ACL? Shit.
That shows his dedication to this business and why he's one of the best.
Yes. Punn, why don't you tell us about the Russian Nightmare, Scott Simpson, aka Nikita Koloff.
I'm telling you, this is the first time I learned that the Russian Nightmare, Nikita Volkov, was American.
This is the first time I seen it too.
I did not know that Nikita Volkov was Scott Simpson from Minnesota, a football player. Never knew that. That was news to me. But boy, he got that call from Crockett. Shave your head and come through, and it ended up working out.
Talk about living the gimmick to the point where here we are, how many years later, and we just found out he wasn't Russian at all.
And you know, it's keeping that kayfabe all these years. Never went by Scott Simpson again. He was Nikita Volkov from the second he walked into Crockett Promotions for the rest of his life. And you know, I gotta say, I love it. You know,
yes.
I believed it still to today.
Well, he went so far with the gimmick that he didn't even speak English to anyone and ordered subscriptions to Russian magazines to his house. So like he really fucking made it seem like he was. So of course we're gonna believe, you know.
It was funny because he went out to a supermarket or something, and the cashier was trying to talk to him in Russian, and he goes, English, we in America now. So when people knew who he was and he didn't really speak the language, he had to play it off, still in gimmick, but told a Russian to speak English. We're in America now, and he fucking started speaking English.
Yeah.
You know, that's living the gimmick, you know.
Bro.
Faking it till you make it, bro.
Yeah, well, Jim Cornette told the story of how Arn Anderson once told Nikita that, hey, bro, you could drop the accent because we all know you're from Minnesota, bro. Like, something
right,
that I didn't.
Wait. Ethan just text me.
Okay.
Right,
Good. Because I was gonna get into the next thing. Good.
Yep. And then this. Next thing, the riot, right?
No, the little tidbit that he was actually tested for the Rocky IV character of Ivan Drago.
Yeah. That was still.
But he was too big for Stallone.
Text when you're coming back up. All right.
Now, another thing I didn't know about Nikita is that he was actually screen tested for Rocky IV for the Ivan Drago character, and he never broke character even while doing, like, he still played Nikita fucking Koloff, and they loved what Nikita brought to the table, but apparently when he went face to face with Stallone, he was too big, and Nikita realized it when the director said that his shadow was blocking out Stallone. So can you imagine that though? If we had Nikita Koloff in Rocky IV, all right, after having fucking Hulk Hogan, you know, as Thunder Lips and Rock.
when I see the big Russian though that played Ivan, he was a big dude too, bro.
Yes, but he wasn't big like, yeah,
Like
he
Triple
was
H did.
big like this. He was big
He,
this way,
he was
not
like
this way.
this.
You know,
Yeah,
he was tall Russian, not big Russian, tall
I loved
Russian.
it. He lived it to the end, man. I never knew he was American, and I can't
Well,
believe it.
he even went as far as to when his daughter was born, on his daughter's birth certificate, he had it put that he was his birthplace was Lithuania.
Yep.
Like,
Yeah, yeah. That's how you live the fucking gimmick.
bro,
Her,
imagine that, bro.
her last name was Koloff.
Can you imagine that, bro? That is living like, I'm gonna go as far as to my kids' documents. I'm Nikita Koloff. I'm from Lithuania.
And she was born there too.
Oh man. All right, now we have there's a bad plane crash, a really bad plane crash that happened on October 4th, 1975. The flight was from Charlotte to Wilmington, and it had 5 members of the Mid Atlantic roster. And David gives a story as his brother asked if it would make the if he could make the flight with Ric Flair, Tim Woods, Johnny Valentine, Bob Bruggers, and the pilot.
40
And
you and a face.
yep, and Crockett made a joke to the pilot that I hope you aren't dumping fuel. The engine started to flutter, and to this day, he still isn't sure why the pilot didn't land at the airport in Florence. They were over a river, and Crockett knew there was no way they were surviving a crash into a body of water. Everything got quiet, and everyone was controlling their breathing, and that was the last thing he heard. The plane goes down, and Cornette calls it the defining moment in Jim Crockett Promotions. Valentine was the top heel in the territory, and he wound up never wrestling again. Bruggers was just starting his career, and that flight wound up ending his career. Flair broke his back and was miraculously back in the ring in 6 months. And the other guy was Mr. Wrestling. He was the top babyface, and he was a symbol of clean, scientific wrestling. It was a plane full of heels, like we said, besides Woods, and he knew it would be news if he was on a plane with the heels. He that couldn't get out at that time. So him being on the plane with his rival Valentine would definitely kill Jim Crockett Promotions. So when the police asked for names, Woods gave his real name and stated he was a promoter. Some were smart enough to figure it out, so Woods checks himself out of the hospital against medical advice. He showed up to wrestle as Mr. Wrestling 3 days later to throw the fans off the scent. And he didn't have as many severe injuries as everyone else, but he knew if he worked 3 days later, then nobody would even suspect he was just in the plane crash.
Yep.
And Cornette credits his acts as saving Jim Crockett
Yep.
Promotions and keeping them on a path to become a threat to the WWF at that time.
Exactly. Yeah. Yep. That would have definitely killed wrestling in the Carolinas. Definitely. Kayfabe was number one all along, and that would have came out that these two rivals are on a plane together.
Yeah.
Despite their injuries and whatnot, all that, wrestling would have been done.
We're gonna get into the riot at the Omni. Yes. The Omni is one of the most famous arenas for Jim Crockett Promotions. And they had a cage match where this was like a double turn. This was definitely a crazy a night that was unexpected. Um, all Now it's the night of the cage match. Where Dusty saves Flair. All right, infamous fucking angle here. This really starts off a heated rivalry for that I think really put a stamp on Jim Crockett Promotions. Uh, so Flair was just attacked in the cage after a match. During his match, Dusty Rhodes comes out to save Flair, and what does Flair do? He attacks Dusty and joins with the Andersons in beating the shit out of Dusty Rhodes. All the faces come out, right, to try to climb the cage to make the save, and the Andersons and Flair are just beating them down, getting them off the cage. What this winds up leading to a riot, Punn,
Mm-hmm.
and the fans start pushing in the
And yeah,
cage door.
throwing shit and pushing in.
Why don't you take it from there?
So the fans, start to break through security. At first, the Andersons were trying to hold the cage door closed, thinking, keep them out of the ring. But then, it was getting worse and worse with the amount of people that was trying to get to them, that they actually left the cage. And as they were heading back, they were being thrown with bottles and thrown with all types of shit that, by the time they made it back through the curtain, it looked like they were in a murder scene. All three of them were dripping blood, gushing from all over the place.
And they didn't
They,
know from where.
barely survived just making it from the steel cage back to the locker room. And, it was insane. It was about 40 fans trying to break into that cage and trying to get to Ric Flair and the Andersons, because that was the heel turn that,
I don't
broke
think
the
that
fans' hearts.
I don't
You know,
think there was a heel turn like that. Like
yeah,
I mean, we got it close with Hogan turning heel. We got
later
close.
on.
Yeah.
Also later
No,
on.
no, but I'm not talking about just here. I'm talking about in general. In
In
wrestling
general.
history,
Okay.
I think in wrestling history there hasn't been a heel turn like when Flair turned on Dusty.
Yeah, that night. Yeah, you're right. That
I
crowd
mean, it started a riot.
That crowd could have fucking destroyed that building completely and murdered all three of those guys
Yeah.
if they got hands on them. They're
Yeah.
lucky. They're lucky to get into the locker room when they did.
Now, in 1988, Jim Crockett Promotions was sold to Ted Turner and rebranded as what we know as World Championship Wrestling, WCW. And we all know WCW's history by now. They wound up going head to head with WWF, staying head to head with WWF, but directly going head to head, causing the Monday Night Wars, the Attitude Era, and set up a whole turn of events to get us to where we are today in professional wrestling. And we do have Jim Crockett Promotions, Mid Atlantic Wrestling to thank for that. Now,
Yep.
what most of the promotions, just like most of the promotions we've covered in this series, it was like a family, and it was very sink or swim. It's we're gonna build this together or we're gonna die together.
Yeah.
And I mean, they lasted up until 2001, and it was definitely quite a time in like Arn said, from 85 to 88. Those are the shows that I've watched on Peacock. When I get a chance to watch old school shit, I like to watch those shows. Those we call them pay-per-views today, with super shows, super cards. Um, those super cards that they do have available, like you can see. All right, this is where is like you could see it was a different time.
Voice play.
This is where things started. Oh shit. I seen that in 1995. Is oh shit? Did they get that from here back in '85?
Yeah.
Also a different style of wrestling, a different style of fans, even.
Yeah. Definitely.
You know,
Definitely.
like you think a New York crowd is wild. You shit. Try a Charlotte crowd in '85. It's
For sure.
But and I think that's a good way to end this episode.
And
And next week we have our last episode, and our last episode of this
season
series,
finale.
the season finale, and it will be our season finale here for Territory Talk. But we're gonna be covering Mid South Wrestling
Mid-
for the final episode of Tales from the Territory. And here on Territory Talk. And then we're going to get into another series. Yes, another podcast for us, Punn. And this is going to be based on Vice's next series, which is going to air directly after, like the next week. So they jumping right into another series called The 9 Lives of Vince McMahon.
And honestly, I think I'm going to enjoy this a lot more than Tales from the Territory.
Well, I think we both are, but this was more of like educational for us. You know what I mean? And hearing about how badass and the ribs and shit like that. Like this is more educational. I think this next one's gonna be more entertainment and more up our alley because this is what we grew up on. You know, we're gonna hear a lot of probably the times we grew up on.
I'm still gonna hear a lot of shit that we haven't heard from a lot of these stories.
True.
I'm sure we are. So it's gonna be interesting to see what new stuff here, like from his lawsuits back in the 90s and shit like that. Because I saw that was something they advertised for this.
Well, since it's called The 9 Lives of Vince McMahon, is each episode is it gonna be 9 episodes and each episode is gonna be like a different controversial thing? You know, like
we'll find out in 2 weeks.
I guess we'll find out in 2 weeks. Man.
Forward to it as much as we are.
On that note, I guess we'll end the show. On behalf of myself and John Punn, we'd like to thank each and every one of you for tuning into Territory Talk on the Four Corners Network. If you'd like to stay updated on everything that we're doing, we have some pretty big news that'll be coming in the next couple of weeks. You can find it all, the wrestling rumor talk, the news, even the Four Corners podcast up above Punn's head at Four Corners Net. That's at the number 4 Corners Net on all social media platforms. And you can find myself on all social media platforms at Rex Wrestles. That's REX Wrestles on all social media platforms. And Punn, let them know where they can find you.
And you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Yes, that's all 3 social media platforms at John Punn, JON. No HPUNN. Yes, sir. Take it away, Rex.
Thanks to each and every one of you for tuning in. As always, be excellent to each other and keep supporting pro wrestling.